the philosophy of the cult that I was in. And I was saying how they don't hold you physically, right? And I was saying when they came to rescue me, they were so nervous, like, we're coming to this cult. What if they cut us up into little pieces and put us in the backyard, right? And I was explaining that they use more mind control, not so much physical control. So one of the things that they said to me that was very scary for me, and it did affect my psyche, was that the evil one runs the world. And if you leave here, you're going to go into the clutches of the evil one. Running a Chabad house or teaching classes or teaching college, I love it all. I want every little bit of it. Still to this day, Hannah, sometimes you're going to think I'm crazy. But I literally the other day, I went over to my bookshelf and I just hugged it. I was like, I just want to take you all in. I still feel that way. I love Torah. I love the Rebbe. I love Hasidus. I love it all.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have once again Sara Korn. Sara Korn was invited back because so many of you have asked. We want part 2. She was so incredible and so inspiring in the first part. If you want to look back at the interviews for the first part, it was called on Chabad.org From Grateful Dead to Godly Life. And it was called on YouTube, She Left a Christian Cult and What Happens Next Will Shock You. So that's kind of where we left off in the interview last time. She had joined this Christian cult. And after joining this cult, her then boyfriend, who is now her husband, with whom she runs the Chabad House of Bowery in New York, came to rescue her and pull her out of the cult. And what happened next is really what we want to hear about. So,
Right.
Sara, tell us, remind us a little about that cult place, and then take it from there. What happened next?
Right. So basically, we left off that I was in a place of really searching and wanting more. And I was at a concert, and these people from this cult tend to go to these places that they know they're going to find vulnerable people like me who are looking for more and get them to join their cult, which is exactly what happened. I was literally like prime target for them. Um, but thank God I was rescued. The truth is, um, I was rescued by my now husband and his aunt and his best friends who cared deeply for me. But I do also want to say that I did leave of my own agency,
Right, for
which is
sure.
interesting because, well, it's funny though, because I someone gave me the book by Shia Hecht. I don't know if you ever read it, called Confessions of a Jewish Cult Buster.
Help us through, right? Yes.
So I actually looked it up because I was going to say we should post the link for people. It's so interesting. He has incredible stories of actually pulling people out of cults who were deeply embedded
Right.
and needed to literally be pulled out. Um, and it's such a fascinating read. But one thing that was very helpful for me, because I did leave of my own agency, I decided to leave because I was pulled to the people who came to get me, and I felt a warmth, like I was saying in the last episode. um, I really didn't believe I had been in a cult, which is typical
Right.
of people who
Right.
were in a cult. Like, it wasn't like
But
I was like, I'm leaving this cult,
right, no, but you did describe also how, you had different pulls. Like on the one hand, you were looking at the cult and it was supposed to represent peace and serenity and prayer and
Mhm.
spirituality. And you were looking at your husband, who was then a boyfriend, and his friend and his aunt. And it just, you were talking about that pulling, that soul pulling, and how hard it was to actually leave until you
Yeah.
came to that decision and you just pulled yourself out of there.
Yeah. And I just like ran. I went, like, we sped away. But when I was reading this book and someone gave it to me like shortly after I left, I was like, oh my gosh, like all the red flags of a cult they had.
Right.
And
Wow.
I don't remember all of them, but I remember two in particular. One is that they take all your possessions. So
Mm.
if you have debt, they take your debt. But if you have money, they take your money.
Wow.
All of it. You don't own anything.
Wow.
That's one really big red flag to a cult, is that you don't have any of your own possessions. And the other thing is that the leaders don't live by the rules of everyone else.
Mm,
And
interesting.
yeah, isn't it? Because,
Yeah,
right, that's like, what's the pinnacle of a Jew is someone who lives up to the ideals that they preach,
mhm,
that they hold themselves even maybe to a higher standard than they would ask of their
right.
congregation. Whereas it's the opposite in a cult. It's like the
Hmm.
rules don't apply to them, they're above the rules. And they had those two things there. So it was very eye opening for me. I was like, whoa, I was actually in a cult.
Wow, wow.
Yeah,
Because you didn't feel that at the time. You felt that it was just a spiritual place and you were just learning Christianity. It was a
yeah,
Christian cult, right? So it was
yeah,
just
yeah,
so that's interesting. So what happened after? So you were pulled out of the cult and then what? Like,
yeah, yeah.
we kinda left off there and that's why everyone was like, "We need part 2 because what happens with her after that?"
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important actually to tell the second half of my story because, anyone who didn't watch, go watch the first half. But it's like very, splitting of the sea, miracles, like divine revelation, my soul speaking to me and me hearing its voice and following it. I think it's very important to follow up with what came next because the second half is more grounded, but
Mhm.
equally, I think, inspiring because I carried it through. And here I am 30 years later, still experiencing miracles, but more interwoven into my very, very real
Right,
life.
right.
Um,
And I'm
so,
sure also it wasn't like, like a graph straight up. Like I'm sure there was a lot of ups and downs as well.
yeah,
So often, we did a follow-up with Tova Mordechai because also with her, it was like she left this real cult.
yeah,
And you think, okay, after you leave, everything's great, live happily ever after. And we actually called it not happily ever after because you don't. There's a lot of ups and downs that you face and
yeah,
challenges. And
yeah.
I'm sure that was part of your journey as well.
Yeah, yeah, because life is about meeting those challenges and
Right.
really bringing God into those places. It's not just about living on a high.
Right.
Um, Yeah, so interestingly, one of the things that Rabbi Hecht says in his book is that when you have a Jew who is in a cult, right? Why did they go there? They went there because they were really searching. They wanted more. Okay,
Mm,
they just and they weren't finding it in their life. And so one of the things he says there is you can't take them out of a cult and just like put them back into like their mundane life that they were living before they joined it. And
mm,
I hadn't read this book, neither did my parents, and neither did Devorah, and yet everyone knew intuitively, I can't just go back home. I couldn't.
right.
Like it was not it, and even my parents, they were like, yeah, she can't come here right now. We don't have what to offer her. So they literally
Because you were searching for more, so you can't just
yeah,
go back to not have that more, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they needed to
That's what got you
satiate.
there to begin with, yes.
Correct. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, that's so incredible of my parents to
Mm,
be so supportive. Like they just knew, they
and so
didn't
intuitive.
so intuitive. So everyone got it.
Like, on
So
the one hand, the parents I would imagine a parent would just say, like, "I just wanna keep her close by and not leave my house," so she doesn't end up who knows where again, but that's not the best place.
totally. And my mother, as a totally secular Jew, is a good barometer for her being able to say, this is different. Like, go
Mm,
become an Orthodox Jew. Like,
mm.
you're going to have your autonomy there. Like, yeah, I'm not
Eh,
worried about you there. Okay, maybe it's different than how I raised you. It's not exactly how I pictured you, but you'll be fine over there. She put me into
interesting.
Deborah's hands and was just like, take her. And obviously, again, she wasn't taking me. I wanted to go. Um, and it's funny because they actually had planned to bring me to Machon Chana straight from the call. And I was just like, Tafara, I think can I stay at your house for a few nights?
Right.
So I ended up staying with Zavora and she became my safe haven, really.
Mm.
Um,
So
so
to
I
for
did
those who weren't watching, Devorah was your
my husband's aunt.
husband's aunt, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She's my husband's aunt. And we're
And sh
still close to this day. Yeah.
and she's a chassid of Chabad, she's a
Yeah.
Lubavitcher, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she was
Yeah.
religious. So it's
Yeah.
interesting because a lot of not people who are not religious are scared of Chabad as a cult. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you get this as a Chabad shlucha, like, "Am I losing my kid, going to this religious
Yeah.
Orthodox,
Yeah.
group, are
Yeah.
they gonna lose their identity? Are they gonna lose their autonomy?" Yet your
Yeah.
mother was encouraging you.
Yeah, because she knew Devora, so she saw, and like I emphasized in the last talk we had, Devora was so good about honoring my process,
Mm.
never gave me
Mhm.
a hard time about any of the things I did, was not controlling, was not. She very much was like, "You are a soul on a journey, you do your thing."
Right.
She only was like, full stop when I was
Mm.
in this cult and was like, "This
Mm.
is bad." So it was like my
Right.
mom felt like they were all on the same page. Everyone just wanted what was best for me. And she felt my mother felt the difference.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I mean, it's funny. Like you hear that occasionally. Oh, Chabad's a cult, but anyone who really knows Chabad knows that
100%.
it's not
Right.
at all what it is, and doesn't fit any of the criteria. And people have plenty of agency and ability to take what they like about Judaism and what resonates with them, and just one mitzvah, right? Ironically,
Mm.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but on that note, I'll tell you one story, and then we'll go back to where I right after. But I don't know if you ever met Benjamin Abrams. Good
Of course,
interview.
we
Did you
did.
interview
We
him?
interviewed
Okay, I
him,
didn't
yes.
see it. So he
We
came
did
from my
interview him.
Havanas.
Yes, he spoke all about you guys,
Oh,
yes.
okay, fine. So it's so funny because what made him choose Yiddishkeit was the Pesach Seder that he came to us, where my husband was speaking about the value of one mitzvah.
That's
Just one
right.
mitzvah is valuable, and it's precious to Hashem. And he was like, "Oh, I don't have to do everything. I could just do one thing." And then he literally became super frum
Right, right.
because he felt the freedom.
The truth is someone who is a real spiritual mentor to you will often tell you, "Go slower," right? "Go slower.
Yes,
Don't do too much because you're
yes,
doing too much, and when you take on too much, it's not good. Too
right.
fast, too quick, it just doesn't work."
Right, it says in the Talmud, if you do too much, you'll end up doing nothing. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So a really good mentor will exactly like you said,
Mhm.
tell you slow down, don't do too
Mhm.
much, take it easy. Um, it's interesting because it says in Hayom Yom that you can have a Hasidic Yetzirah, a Hasidic evil inclination, right? That it'll tell you to do too much so that you'll end up doing nothing. So you have to
Right,
be cautious,
right.
balance. Torah is balance. So one of the first things, so I did end up going to Crown Heights right away. I mean, I went to Devorah's for a few nights. She bought me some nice dresses at the local shop. She kept trying to convince me not everything needs to be a potato sack, but I was coming out of a Christian cult, so I was like, anything that like looked kind of nice on me, I was like, nope, can't wear that. Nope, can't.
Oh, wow.
She's like, no, I'm telling you, you can dress normal.
Why you dressed there like just
Very
very loose
baggy,
clothes? Very
very,
baggy.
very, very baggy. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So she took me shopping, and everybody really took such good care of me. And then she did bring me to Machon Layahadis, the dorm on President Street, the big beautiful home there.
So tell us what that is for those who don't know.
Yeah, so it is like an institution of Judaic studies
Mhm.
for women who did not grow up religious to go and learn about Judaism. So it's in tract. So if you want to do like very basic learning, if you need the very basics, you can do tract one, and then there's tract two and tract three. So you could get really advanced in your Judaic studies. So they have a dorm. Some people commute and come to just the classes, and some people live in the dorm. So I
Mhm.
went to go live there to really immerse in the lifestyle, really absorb the community. And it was a very big culture shock for me, obviously, to come to Brooklyn, New York after being a hippie, you know, traveling around the country, very natural. I was vegan. I never questioned being there. I never questioned Torah or Hasidus after that, but the getting used to the culture was a humongous adjustment for me.
Mhm.
So I did frequently leave and go back to Devorah's house to spend Shabbos with her in Morristown, which is in nature and very beautiful, and it was a safe haven for
What
me.
was the hardest part of going there, of going to this place?
You know, when you're a spiritual seeker, you try to find people who are like-minded.
Mm.
One of the things that Rabbi Paltiel spoke about once, I think you had Rabbi Paltiel on here
We
as
did,
well,
yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so he's a wonderful teacher, and he taught at Machon, but at the school I went to, he was in the higher tier class. I didn't actually take his classes then, but I listened to his classes online now, and I heard him saying something once that was very insightful. He was saying that a nation is made up of many different types of people. You
Mhm.
don't have just one type; you have lots of types. You have the spiritual seekers, you have the more business minded people, you have the people who are a
Mhm.
little more chatty, the people, and I think being in a community where there was so much diversity and not necessarily was everyone going to relate to my
Mm.
spiritual seeking nature, and to have to sort of contend with, yeah, okay, there's a lot of different
Different
types of
people,
people here,
right.
you know?
Mm.
And yeah, it was an adjustment. Also, just like there's a certain like sneer, in the what's the word, modesty in the Jewish community, like men don't smile at you, they're a
Mm.
little aloof, which is
Right.
how it's supposed to be. But I was an adjustment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, like they put the coin down on the counter, they don't place it in your hand. Like just
Right.
little gestures like that were just like so shocking to me. I was like, gosh, they're rude. And Deborah was like, no, they're not rude. They're just
Right.
like trying to make boundaries.
Right, right,
And that's healthy and that's okay. I had to get
right.
used to that. It's interesting. I remember very shortly after, um, I had moved to Crown Heights, and I started to get used to a little bit of that emotional distance. And then I went to go get glasses with my mom back at home, and the man in the store put the glasses on my face. He was just putting them on my face. He was trying them on me, and I'm sure, halakhically it was fine because he had to adjust them to make sure they fit properly. But I remember just being like, that was very that was very intimate. Like he literally placed the
Wow.
glasses on my face. So you become sensitive and you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like, yeah. So one of the first things that,
Did you think that it was a good thing to be so sensitive, like,
yeah,
to the
I
touch of the genders?
Yeah, I appreciated it. I was like, "Oh, I get it now. I understand." Like that's
Mm.
I'm glad I'm sensitive now to
Mhm,
something that
mhm.
shocked me before. Now I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. 'Cause we're so
Yeah.
used to the casual touch and the casual interactions between
Yeah.
men and women. It kind of really makes you rethink things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me. So wow.
right.
Um so I don't know if you remember, but when we were speaking last time, we were speaking a little bit about the philosophy of the cult that I was in, and I was saying how they don't hold you physically, right? Now, I was
Mm,
saying when they
mhm.
came to rescue me, they were so nervous, like we're coming to this cult. What if they cut us up into little pieces and put us in the backyard, right?
Right,
And I was explaining that they use more mind control, not so much physical
right.
control. So, but one of the things that they said to me that was very scary for me, and it did affect my psyche, was that the evil one runs the world, and if you leave here,
Mm,
you're going to go into the clutches of the evil one. And it sat with me a little bit, like I was nervous. And one of the first books that they gave me when I came to Machon was the Hasidic Approach to Joy, which
mhm,
is still in print. And I highly recommend it. It's an excellent book written by Rabbi Shlomo Majeski, the dean of Machon Liahadis, and basically explains there that God runs the world, that there's nothing but God.
mm, mm,
And that's why Hasidim, who that the Baal Shem Tov, one of his core teachings is this idea of divine providence, that there's not, that really God controls everything, even a leaf falling on a worm, right, to protect it from the sun. And that's why the early Hasidim were called the happy ones, because they know that God runs the world, and therefore God is good and he's in charge of everything. Then we should always be happy, right?
mm.
Easier said than done. It's a life's
Right.
work.
Right,
um,
absolutely.
but that was really
So was that a hard change of, like, psyche to change from the evil runs the world to God runs the world? Like, how did you incorporate that teaching into your worldview?
no. So I'll tell you. So interestingly, you brought up Tova Mordechai. So for Tova Mordechai, she grew up Christian her whole life.
Mhm,
So for her to like deprogram and really shift her, it was. I read her book. It's incredible. Um, It was like a life's work to change your mentality from something that is so ingrained in you your whole life. For
mhm,
me, I was searching. I joined this cult for about
mhm,
3.5 weeks.
mhm.
Some of the things that they said to me, because I was very impressionable, had an impact on me, but I was very
Right,
easily shifted.
right.
So it was almost like such a relief to read this
Mm,
book, because I was like, oh, I knew something was off about what they were telling me, but I couldn't
right.
put my finger on it. And as soon as I read Majeski's book, I was like, okay, yes, this makes so much more sense. And
Mm,
now I'm good. It was
mhm,
very easy to shift out of that. Um, so yeah, so I was living in the dorm, and Mrs. Gonsberg, Alea Shalom, may she what's the word? Heaven, an aliyah in heaven. She was such an incredible woman. By the time I came to the dorm, she was probably already in her 80s. So
So
she had been doing it for
she was like the dorm mother, right?
a dorm mother, yeah, appointed by the Rebbe to play this very special role. And the Rebbe really took a lot of um, pride and put a lot of attention on the Machon girls. Like he felt like these are the women of this generation
Mm,
that I'm educating through creating this institution. It's the Rebbe's school, really. It's one of his Mostos. Under his Mostos is like an institution, right? It's under his
right.
auspices.
Mhm.
And and the Rebbe appointed Mrs. Gonsberg. Actually, when she passed away, I went to her shloshim. I spoke for it, and I told some stories about how she welcomed me in when I first came there. But I also got to hear from her daughters, and they said that the Rebbe wrote a letter to her saying, "Halavai." What? How do you translate halavai? Like,
If only.
if only Jewish women would be like you. About her, can you
Mm,
imagine?
wow,
Yeah,
wow.
she was incredible. So she took me in like a Russian Israeli grandma, which she is,
Right, right.
harsh love. And she would not let me leave her sight because she was so nervous that these cult people were going to come and snatch me up. So she would like not let me go out unescorted. And I felt loved. I definitely did not appreciate not being able to like go out alone, but I knew she was doing it because she was worried about me and she cared about me. I'll never forget, so my mother, she was very upset that so I drove away like with my wallet. I left my wallet with $30 that had my license in it and my little jar of almond butter that I came to the cult with. They didn't take that away. I guess that wasn't like valuable enough to them to feel they needed to take my $30, or maybe they just didn't know I had it. But so my mother, but I left it there because I rushed out. And my mother called them and said, "Please send us back her wallet. We want it back." And I don't know why she did that. Anyway, so they sent it back and my mother brought it to me. She didn't look inside and they'd put a letter in there for me. And it was like
Oh,
a whole
wow.
letter, like guilting me for leaving. You
Oh
gave
my
your life
gosh.
over to God. Like, how could you leave? Whatever. And I was really very shooken up by this letter because it was very harsh. And it also said the word God all over it. Now, when you're a new Balchuva, a fresh returnee to Judaism, which I was full on, I, Hannah, I wanted every little itty bit of it. I wanted everything. I wanted to know every word in the Shulchan Aruch and the Code of Jewish Law. I wanted to do it all. I was one of those extreme people who like wanted, but there was nothing anyone could tell me. Like I was not, no one was going to slow me down. It was just,
Right.
so I was
You
annoying.
you were on fire. You were on fire to do it all, right?
I was, and I was so annoying to my roommates, my poor roommates, because not everyone who goes to Mahon is like wants to do everything. You know what I'm saying? A lot
Yeah.
of them are more balanced and they just
Right.
want to take it easy. And I was like, no, 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 you have to do this and you have to do that. I was
Uh,
so obnoxious. So I'm sorry. I am so sorry if you're out there watching this. So So I go to Mrs. Gonsberg, and on Mrs. Gonsberg, they wrote me this letter, and they wrote God all over it, and you're not allowed to rip up God's name. You can't throw it out. It says God.
Mm.
So she takes it and she goes, "It's not our God," and she rips it up into like a million pieces and throws it in the garbage.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, so I was lonely because I was very zealous and very excited. And like I said, not everyone could relate to me. I did have my few families, like the Rosenthal's, who now live in Muncie, right? So Vichai and Yaakov, they live near you now.
Oh, of course. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Yeah,
Yeah. So I
wow.
was very, very close to them. I still am. And I ate by their house a lot. So there were some lovely families that really took me in and that I felt at home at. But, for the most part, I was lonely. I didn't have a lot of
Mm.
friends. Not a lot of people could relate to me. I was very, very excited to be there. I remember when I got to school and I had to fill out the paperwork because I'm like, it's an actual institution that has tuition and paperwork and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I remember they ask you in the form, like, you know, do you keep kosher? Do you keep Shabbos? Do you keep Yontif? Do you keep modesty? They want to know, like, what's your level? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. And then it's like, for how long? For how long? For how long? And I'm like, 2 days, 2 days, 2 days. I literally go over to the secretary. I'm like, I can't. I can't fill this out. She probably thought I was crazy. Like, not everyone knew my story. Not everyone
Right,
was like, oh, she just came from this very.
right.
So I felt misunderstood and a little lonely. And they made, special rules for me because generally, the dorm, if you're going to live there, there's rules. Like, you can't necessarily go away every Shabbos. You have to, like any school, they have their
Mm,
regulations to be there because they want to create an atmosphere for the girls that are there. Like, not everyone leaves for Shabbos, no one's there. Then how can you create an environment? So they had certain rules. If you want to live in the dorm, you're welcome to come to the school and not live in the dorm. But for me, they let me go to Devoras for Shabbos whenever I wanted to because
mm.
they knew I needed space and time to adjust. Um, but at a certain point, I was like, the only one who understands me is Daviana. He wasn't Butterfly anymore at this point. The only one who understands me is him.
And he
So
he he was your boyfriend. He was your boyfriend, but he had I mean, just tell us a little about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
He's
So
now your he's now your husband, but at that point, where was he, like, in as
right,
far as his religion?
right. So he was full on Lubavitch, black
Mm.
hat. Like, he had gone through his own journey, which he's in the middle of writing a book about. So hopefully
Oh,
that will
wow.
be on hot on the press, and probably it's going to take a while, but keep your eyes out for it. So you'll hear his story then. But um, he had his own journey, and at this point, when he came to rescue me from the cult, he had already made peace with the fact that we were not going to be a thing. And that
Mm,
was hard for him because he really really did feel connected to me and really did want to marry me. But when he became ultra orthodox and I was still, you know going to Christian cults and all that stuff, he
right.
kind of had to make a break. So when they came to get
Even
me,
though I'll remind our listeners that when he first saw you, he said, "I'm gonna marry you," like,
the
and the
first
first
minute
time he
he
saw
met
you,
me,
right? Right,
but
yes.
that was before he was religious.
Right,
And then we
100%.
went on a journey, and like, he became very religious and I kind of didn't follow suit. So he was like, okay, maybe she's not the one for me. And he really told God, like, he said, listen, like, I'm going to let go of her. I'm leaving it in your hands. If she's meant to be mine, she'll come back to me
Mm,
religious. And if not,
mm,
she won't. So when he came to rescue me, and then the next day or a few days later, they brought me to Devora, brought me to Machon, he was thinking, oh my gosh, this is, but he, like, wouldn't let himself go there because he didn't know how I felt anymore. And like, it was just very, you know, kind of
right.
put it out of his mind.
Wow.
So I'm there for a couple months and we weren't speaking because, he was a bacher in yeshiva. He was a good yeshiva student. He wasn't speaking to girls. So at a certain point, I was like, no one understands me like he does. I need to speak to him. I just felt so lonely, and I needed my best friend.
Mhm,
And so I remember making a meeting with Rabbi Majeski, and I said to him, I started to describe my relationship with Daviona. This is Hebrew name. I don't know if I told you that in the last. He went by Butterfly when I met him. I called him Butterfly
right.
for 2 years straight.
Right.
That then it was Daviona, and I said to him, I really, I really wanna, I really wanna speak to Daviona. Maybe we could learn together. So as I'm describing, no one understands me like he does, and we just have this very deep and special connection. So Rabbi Majeski's, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something like, I mean, do you think that maybe one day you'll eventually get married? I was like, a light bulb went on. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. He's my husband. Like,
Yeah.
that makes so much
Oh,
sense.
wow, wow.
So it's so funny because my kids, like, they'll tell their teachers in school, in like Beis Rivka, they'll be like, my mom asked my dad to marry him. because Because what ensued is that I basically called him after not having spoken to him in a few months. And I was like, hi, you know what? I had this talk with Rabbi Majeski, and it became very obvious to me that we're meant to be married.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
he literally couldn't catch his breath. He was like, uh,
What
um, should we
what a
should we go to the
shocker, yeah.
well?
Oh, were you serious? You were ready already? Like, that was it? No.
No. So no, no, no. We ended up dating for a while and, like, reacquainting ourselves, even though it took 3 seconds. We were so aligned in every way that it wasn't even like we had to re-get to know each other. It was like right back to where we left off. But we took time because every one of my mentors agreed that I just needed time. Like it was too
Right.
soon for me to just go run and get married.
And it
Um,
wasn't really where you left off because you were such a different person now, as was he. I mean, he was already on that path, but I
you
imagine he
know,
was further along.
yeah, I don't, I feel like me just fully realized. I don't feel my personality changed or who I
Mm,
was or what was driving me. I changed.
mm,
It's just, it took on a form that I could live with and live by.
mm,
And
mm,
so it just, yeah, it clicked right away. It was not,
mm.
it wasn't, it was like, yeah, thank God we found truth. Yay. Like
Wow.
now we could just like live our lives based on this. Like, we don't have to wonder anymore. Now we know.
Right.
And yeah, so
Wow.
yeah. And my mother was so happy. I think because even though it was an adjustment that we were both, Orthodox and there were certain things she had to get used to, she knew his parents. He had a very similar upbringing to me. So,
Mm.
and she already knew his family. It was so familiar. And she planned my wedding, my whole wedding.
So how long did you date for until
It
you
was about
actually
9 it was about 9 months before from I learned for about 9 months before
9
we
months?
actually got
Wow.
married. Yeah, it was almost a
Right.
year. And then I continued learning after we got married. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Rob Majeski even said to me, he goes, "Normally in our community, we don't have such long engagements, but for you, you need
Right.
some time." And then I agreed. I wasn't rushing. Um but but it just felt right and it all fell into place. We were young, by the way. I mean, we were young. I turned 20 and he turned
Wow.
19 when we got married. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So he's a
Yeah.
year younger than you.
9 months younger than
Wow.
me. Yeah. Which
Wow.
the
That's
Rebbitzin is 11
really
months older than the Rebbe. Yeah,
yes,
sorry.
absolutely. That's really young, like,
We were
and
young.
you knew at that point,
You know.
what you knew who you wanted to marry, you knew the direction of your life, even though you had undergone so much change.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just yeah, it really just flowed from there. I did have ups and downs in my life, which we could talk about, but I never questioned, thank God, the direction that my life took or
Mm,
who I married, thank God. I'm very blessed in that way,
mm,
because I was
mhm,
young.
mhm.
But it flowed and it was right. And yeah,
It sounds like such a book story, love story.
I know. It's a problem because because when we tell our story, people are like, "I want that," and I'm like, "Listen,
Right.
marriage takes work. Okay, marriage takes work. Thank God when you have that core connection, when you choose
Mhm,
this person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, and that you share core values, then that is what gets you through the more difficult
mhm,
times. It doesn't mean that it's always easy. Learning how to really care about another person and set yourself aside for them and be there for them is not easy. And my husband and I are literal opposites in the way that we express
mhm,
ourselves. So we have the same core values, but we are so different. And it took a long time for us to, I really feel in a marriage, like this is not always, but a lot of times I see, and I for sure saw it in my marriage, where you come to terms with your differences
mhm,
until you turn the corner and you realize the differences are actually what make the marriage.
mhm,
And the qualities that they have that you feel you need to accept become the qualities that you realize you appreciate the most about them, and that's what
mhm.
they actually lend to the relationship that you don't have. And that's when a marriage becomes truly rich. And I think that takes a long time to reach
Wow.
that place.
Can you give us an example? Like, what was it? What was it that you and he how were you
Yeah.
so different?
Yeah. So, for example, I am actually very introverted, like
Mm.
extremely introverted. Like, I could talk now, but when I finish this interview, I will be exhausted for 3 hours. Like, I will need to go take a walk by myself, not talk to anyone, listen to music, maybe learn a little something. Um, I need a lot of alone time, a lot of time to think, get lost in my thoughts. So now my husband just calls me a nutty professor. He's like, oh, like I literally walk into walls, like when
Right.
I got, um, but it used to drive him crazy. Like, why aren't you more outgoing? Why aren't you more
Mm,
extroverted? Why don't you like being
mm.
around people more?
Right,
And now he realizes it's what makes me rich and
right.
internally who I am.
Mhm.
Like, when I have a feeling, I wanna cherish it inside. I don't like
Mhm.
talking about my feelings so much.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he's the opposite. He's the opposite. So, just learning to sort of be like, wow, your introverted nature is actually what I like about you, and vice versa. Your
Right.
extroverted nature makes our life adventurous. And
Right.
he's so adventurous, and he loves to try new things. I like predictable. It's funny because I joined this Christian cult, and I seem like I like adventure, but the truth is I like things that are predictable. I like Seder, I like order and structure. And he loves adventure and trying new things, and I realized
Interesting.
like that makes my life rich. But at the beginning of our marriage, it was like, no, stop trying to get me to do new things,
Right.
you know.
Sure. Wow.
Um,
Wow.
no, I think you just come to a place of really, really learning how to appreciate the other. And I always
Right.
tell people now, I'm a Kala teacher now. I got certified through mikvah.org about 8 years ago when they did their first round. And I tell people like the flip side of your spouse's quality, the quality that drives you the craziest, you'll come
Mhm.
to the best place in your marriage when you realize it's the flip side of what you love the most about
Right.
them.
It's true. Well, I think that's what what attracts you to begin with, but then it drives you crazy, and then
Yeah.
you come to a place where
Yes.
you see the positive of it.
Yes, 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 and
Right.
that's a real turning point because then you really appreciate each other. So that took time, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, I don't wanna
So
put.
I'm
Yeah,
curious if you're such an introvert, how did you end up on Shluchus, and how do
great
you use your
question,
introversion for that?
great question. So, we got married, we were living in Crown Heights for that first year, and my husband started to do work with Rebbe Bankalter in Manhattan. He
Mhm.
was doing some community work, and they got along really well. They knew each other from Morristown Yeshiva, so he asked him to come and do some events with him. He wanted like a sidekick, someone to work with him. And my husband at the time had been doing getting his degree in psychology at Yeshiva University. And in Yeshiva University, they have a year off where they go abroad to Israel. And my
Mhm.
husband took his year off abroad to Crown Heights to go get
Oh.
smicha, there. And so he had some time, and he was doing this work with Rabbi Bankalter. And when it came time to go back to his psychology degree at YU, he was conflicted because my husband has this very keen ability to tune into people. Like he would make a very good psychologist, but he felt like he could utilize those same qualities to help people spiritually, which he does. And
Mhm.
he felt like, wait a second, like, am I supposed to go back to YU and take the 7-year psychology tract when I
Mhm.
could be, helping Jews? And I could start right away because he had gotten his smicha and he was like ready to go. So he didn't know what to do. And obviously he was nervous because, the reason why his father agreed to support us when we got married so young was because he was going to have a stable source of income through his psychology degree that he was getting at YU. God bless my father-in-law. He's been so supportive of us through all of our decisions and all of our parents. Um, so he was like a little bit nervous, but he was feeling this pull and he was feeling this tension. So he decided to write a letter to the Rebbe. And like I said, nowadays we would drop it in the Ohel and maybe speak to a mashpia or see what kind of answer we would get. But at that time, we were opening holy books to get responses. By the way, I literally just watched a class on it after our last talk, and there's a Rabbi Krasniansky from Florida, and he did a whole class about this, and he brings all the sources from the Talmud and different Achronim, like the Chida, who he was a student of the Or HaChaim, who lived around the same time as the Baal Shem Tov. And so it is really an idea in Torah
Mhm.
that is discussed, this idea of
Absolutely.
opening up a holy book. And apparently the Vilna Gaon had a calculation that if you had a question, you would open a book and you would do a certain calculation that was passed down verbally from certain students of the Vilna Gaon, and people would get answers that way. So it's not just a
Mm.
Hasidic thing.
Mhm.
But so my husband decided to open up a letter of the Rebbe, and he wasn't getting an answer. So, and at that time, we were getting answers, and this was such a big question. Should I go on shlichus and become your emissary in Manhattan, or should I, go back to YU? It was like not something he was going to do without direct guidance. So he didn't know what to do. So he comes to his mashpia at the time, and his mashpia says, "Show me your letter." And he says, "I know why you're not getting an answer, because look at your letter. You're not asking the Rebbe what you should do, if you should go become his emissary. What you're basically doing is you're telling the Rebbe what you think you should do."
Mm.
And he wrote in the letter, like, "I want to go help Jews. I'm feeling the pull to it, but I think I need to make my parents happy and go back to YU." Like, he was kind of like,
Mhm.
he wasn't
Yeah.
asking. He was like kind of telling and asking for a blessing. Is this the right thing? So he said, "Change your question and you'll get an answer. But
Mm.
maybe call your wife and ask if she's okay with you doing that." So he
Mm.
calls me and he goes, "Okay, like, whatever answer I get, we're gonna go with that. Are you okay with that?" So I was like, "Sure." So it's funny because sometimes I like Seder, I like order, and I like the predictable. And occasionally, I'm
This
up
was
for an
quite
adventure.
spontaneous, yeah.
Sometimes I'm up for it. If it's spiritual, I'm usually okay with it.
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, fine." So he says to the Rebbe, "I'm sorry, I wasn't wording my question right. I would like to know if I should go become your emissary in Manhattan, and if this is, the will of God for me, like, I would like a bracha that we should do it." He opens up to a letter that says, "Well, now that you've changed to a new type of avoda, you should.
Mm.
I wanted to advise you not to pursue a living, not to do anything in the pursuit of a living. You should go and make Jews happy all day long through the joy of teaching them the joy of a mitzvah."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
so we were off.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. And how old were you at that time?
Like 21. I like
Oh,
it was a
wow,
year after we got
really?
married.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, wow.
So let me tell you something even more funny, Hannah. This is crazy. I didn't know what a Chabad house was.
I can imagine.
I didn't know. No, but
Sure.
I didn't know there was such a. I didn't
Concept,
even know
right,
that what I was doing was
right,
going to. I just thought, oh yeah, like that's what Jews do. We go to live in random places and invite people to our house for Shabbos, because, like, how would I know what Shabbos was if Devorah didn't invite me to her house? Like, I just
right.
thought that's what Orthodox Jews do. Like,
Just do.
I didn't. It
Wow.
took me like a couple of years of being on shlichus and going to the banquet to realize, like, oh, there's like a whole network of people who do this. Like, this is like a
Right.
thing. Like, I didn't know. We just. I think my husband did, but I think it was one of those things that people just assumed I knew what I was. I just
Right.
jumped right into it and became a hostess. Um, so at the beginning, it wasn't hard because it was really just hosting people on Shabbos, teaching an occasional class, which, Aleph, you teach Aleph, like, there was plenty of English books, and I was happy to share whatever I knew, happy to prepare a class and whatever. I love to learn, and I was very absorbent. So I was happy to share with people what I was inspired by. That part wasn't hard. Um, when it got a little bit more difficult was when our Chabad house really started to grow. So what happened was we eventually took over New York University when the shluchim who had been doing that work there needed to move to Crown Heights, and they left it to us because they basically said, "You guys are already living in the neighborhood. Why don't you take this over?" And so we decided, instead of, he basically left it, Rabbi Eli and Yehudas Cohen, they basically said, "You guys can decide who will do it.
Mm.
You and the bank cultures can decide. Maybe you'll bring out another set of shluchim, or one of you will do it. Like, you guys, you'll figure it out." And we decided that my husband and Rabbi Bank Culture felt like, wow, this is perfect for you. You're so young and energetic. My husband's very energetic. You'll be great with college kids. And so
Mm.
from that point, our Chabadis went from, like, hosting an occasional Shabbos meal to, like, boom, within, like, I don't know, a year or two, it was like 200 kids for Shabbos. Like, it went really fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, so
And how was that for the introvert?
it was hard. Like,
Yeah.
I would cook all the food, and I loved it. I actually found a lot of creative expression in creating recipes and cooking. But by the time Shabbos came, after ordering all the food, cooking all the food, making the menus, serving all the food, I was exhausted. Like, sometimes I just wouldn't go for Shabbos because I'd be like, you could bring all this food there and serve it. I can't see a person. I can't talk. Like, I'm just too over.
Right,
Like, I'm
sure.
tired from doing all this work. But no, I enjoyed it a little bit, but we always hired program directors, and I mean, we're right by Crown
Mm.
Heights. So the beauty of being near Crown Heights is we could always find people who were looking to work for a year or two, or even longer, in the programming. So we
Mhm.
we always have a position in our Chabadis. We have an assistant who helps with all the office work and the building issues, and then we have someone who does all the programming and runs our student boards and programs. And I teach a
Mm.
class. I teach kalas. I teach. I love to learn. I let my introverted nature suits itself to. I don't think I've ever missed a day of chitas, Hannah, since I've been from 30 years. I
Wow.
have. I've never missed a day. Maybe 5 days total in 30 years. That's my strength, you know.
Right.
And I remember, chitas, just to tell everyone. So the Rebbe really encouraged the learning of chitas. It's the daily portion of Tehillim, the daily portion of Chumash, and the daily portion of Tanya. And it actually, Rashi uses the word chitas in explanation on one of the psukim in Torah. I don't remember exactly where it's from, and he says it means the word fear.
Mm.
Chitat means fear, and I believe it's the Rebbe who explains that when you learn chitas, you'll have the right kind of fear of God and you won't have the wrong kind of anxiety or fears. Like it helps with fear, the wrong kind of fear. And I remember after I gave birth to my first daughter, Liba, who was born on Pesach Sheni, which is the whole idea of it's never too late,
Mm.
right? Ishkain for fallen. I remember I was in the hospital, I'd just given birth, and I was like, oh, I don't need to do chitas today. I just had a baby. And that night, I had so much anxiety. And I was like, I haven't felt this kind of fear since before I became frum and did chitas. I need to do my chitas. I can't.
Wow.
And I did my chitas, and the anxiety went away right away. So I was like, okay, I'm never not doing my chitas again. And that was it.
Yeah, incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's how we handled it. Is my husband understood that, and again, at the beginning of our marriage, it was hard for him that I was such an introvert, but he accepted it. He was like, okay, like I'm gonna have
Right.
to hire people to do some of the things that maybe another shlucha her age might be willing to do, but like, yeah.
Wow.
So we
It
just made it
just
work.
feels like you stepped into such big shoes, and you were so young and so, so new to it all, and yet you managed, you made it work. That's quite incredible.
It just it is what it was. Like to me, the way I understood it at the time, and I think it was accurate, is this is what it means to be a frum Jew, is that you
Mhm.
invite people to your Shabbos table, you teach them Torah, you like I didn't even see it as like I was giving something up or doing something unique. I just saw it as an extension of my own
Mm.
life and inspiration, that was just what you do. And I'm so
Right.
grateful. I'm so
Wow.
grateful. So I'll tell you a couple of great stories from our Chabad
Sure.
house.
Sure.
Um, yeah. So first of all, when we'd been on running our Chabad house for about 8 years, and we were bursting out of the seams of the basement that we were functioning in. We had like a tiny little basement. It functioned as like an event hall, a shul, an office, a classroom. It was really, and it was like 800 square feet, so don't even ask me how we don't tell the fire department. I don't know how we fit all those neshamas in that room.
Wow.
But buying a building just seemed so impossible because the real estate in our neighborhood was just so
Crazy. So
expensive, and
exorbitant. Yeah.
not even what we needed. We needed like two really big loft spaces to house like the big kind of crowds we were getting. We didn't need like a townhouse that cost
Mm.
$20 million and has tiny little floors. So we didn't even know how we were gonna make it happen. Um, but Hashem has his ways, and miraculously, a building was actually built right in our neighborhood that was like literally what we needed to the T. And then my husband had to convince some donors that it was actually what we needed. And to this day, they're so grateful that he convinced them because they see how we used every inch of the space and more. Um, but it was literally like these spaces came out of heaven. Um, so we got these two beautiful commercial lofts, and for a while my husband was so sad that the address was not something unique like 770 or
Right.
1836 or whatever. You ever read that book that just came out, I Never Met the Rebbe Many Times?
Right, yes.
So he says in
Yes.
there, meet anyone who has a Chabad house. They're going to have a miracle story. And of course, the address is always something like 770, whatever. So my
Right.
husband was very upset because our address is 353 Bowery. And he was like, what's that? One day, one of our students comes running in because that story, how my husband got that answer from the Rebbe to go make Jews happy every day, right? And if you remember my story, originally my original letter from the Rebbe was one of the sentences in that letter was serve God with joy and a happy heart.
Joy. Wow.
The numerical value of the word simcha is 353.
Oh, wow, look at that. Wow.
Yeah.
And
And one of our students came
and
running in one day and she
unbelievable.
goes, Rabbi, you won't believe it. Do you know what the gematria of Simcha is? It's
Wow.
353. And we were like, whoa,
Uh,
isn't
wow,
that amazing?
and joy is such a big part of your life also. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
first book that you were reading when
Yes.
you came to
Yes.
Mechel Chana, right? About
Yes.
being joyful.
Yes.
Wow, and you exude that joy. You exude that joyfulness.
Thank you. It's hard for me,
Wow,
by the way, Hannah, because I have a deep inner joy, but in my life, I'm a very melancholy type of a person. I like take things very seriously, and I'm very
right.
contemplative. So it's like a work for me to be in a state of joy. Um,
So how do you
so
do that?
so learning Hasidus.
Mm,
Learning Hasidus is very, very, very important. Learning every day, even just a little bit, even if it's just 5 minutes. Um, And I have to eat healthy, by the way. And this is
mm,
something that I overlooked for a long time. And I notice, and I mean, everybody has that means something different for everyone, but really taking care of my physical health also really does make a very big difference in my mood. So I would say those two things are really key. And sometimes it's just like putting on music, dancing a little bit,
mm, right,
just getting out of my head and just into my, into my spirit.
right. Wow,
So, yeah,
wow.
so I mean, I have more stories, but I know it's already getting a little bit late, so I don't know, how should we wrap this up? Um,
Um,
maybe I'll tell you 2 more stories and then we'll finish, like 10
sure,
minutes. Yeah, does that
sure,
that make
perfect.
sense? Okay, fine.
Good.
So, my daughter Liba, so she was born on Pesach Sheni, like I said, and she's named after my great grandmother. So my great grandmother was her yard site as Rosh Chodesh Elul. The day she passed away is the first of the month of Elul, and that's also my Hebrew birthday. And
Mm,
my great grandmother is the she was grew up Orthodox, okay? And when she came over to America, that's when my family really kind of assimilated. And
mm,
I was the one who came back to Judaism of my family. And you know how the Rebbe, and it's actually not just the Rebbe does speak about it, but I think it's in the Talmud. It speaks about how it's very significant that Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday and yahrzeit are on the same day, Zion
mhm.
Adar. It shows like a cycle, a complete cycle that he lived a full
Completion.
life. Yeah.
Mhm,
I think there's one Chabad Rebbe that also has it. I think it's the Mitzvah Rebbe, if I remember
mhm,
correctly. So the Rebbe speaks about the significance of that. So I always felt like the fact that her yahrzeit is Rosh Chodesh Elul and my Hebrew birthday is Rosh Chodesh Elul shows like this life cycle of like,
mm,
right? Like that I was the one who
mhm.
I brought it back. And my daughter Liba, who is named after her, is she was born on Pesach Sheni. It's never too late. Like
Yeah.
literally 5 generations later, you have a Liba, who was Liba, who is a shlucha now. She works for us. She's her and her
Oh,
husband
wow.
are shluchim.
Wow.
So I'll tell you a crazy story. So they got married on Chaf Hay, the 25th of the month of Av. We didn't plan that in any kind of proximity to Rosh Chodesh Elul. It was not on purpose at all. But their last Sheva Bracha was Rosh Chodesh Elul. So my son-in-law Yisrael works for Gem, and they didn't know this. They had no clue that we have any connection to the day Rosh Chodesh Elul or anything like that. But as a souvenir for their wedding, they gave us a couple of copies of a CD that they'd put together. Back then, they were still making CDs. I don't even think they do that anymore. It was a CD of a sicha of the Rebbe from Rosh Chodesh Elul, and it had Liba and Yisrael's name on it and the date of their wedding. So I'm like, this is getting a little like, whoa, like the connections. So as my daughter Liva's running her Chabad house, and I'm like more and more the bigger my Chabad house gets, the more introverted I become. The more I'm like, I'm like writing a book right now. I'm like, we have our program directors. I teach my classes. I have my connections with the students I'm connected to. I love the work we do. I take a lot of pride in it. My husband's very busy. I'm like very doing my thing. So on that note, I'm doing my thing, and I have this thought, and we'll finish with this story. So I had this thought. I'm like, you know, I used to feel so connected to Rosh Chodesh Elul. It's my bubby's yard site. It's my birthday. I used to have Fabringans, and I would hand out books and contribute them, and I would put, Eli Nishmas, Liba Bas Yaakov, a Kohen in it, and I always celebrated Rosh Chodesh Elul as my day. I had this thought. I was like, I guess maybe I handed it over to my daughter. Maybe I've passed on the torch.
Mm,
She's like the one carrying on my great grandmother's legacy now and bringing Yiddishkeit to the next generation. And maybe I'm irrelevant now. I don't, Hannah, this is what I'm talking about when I say I get in my head.
Right.
And I got into this like spiral of just like, maybe I'm not needed in this world anymore. Don't,
Mm,
my poor kids. Of course I'm needed. I have, Baruch
right.
Hashem, 8 daughters, some still very young, a wonderful marriage, a beautiful Chabad house. I have plenty to be living for. But I got myself into this headspace of like, okay, maybe my shlichus is on. So I'm like, I didn't tell anyone that I was thinking this. Okay, I'm just thinking this. And one day, my daughter Liba calls me and she goes, Mom, I have no idea the significance of this. I just know it's for you. Yisraelik's Bubby just handed me dollars for the kids, and she gave me $2 that had Rosh Chodesh Elul on them. And I just have this feeling that you have something to do with this because she knows it's my birthday and that it's an important day to me. And I'm like, you got $2 from the Rebbe that both say Rosh Chodesh Elul? I'm like, yeah, one's for you and one's for me. So I'm like, okay, I have to pick. Can I trade? I have $1 from there, but someone gave me. I'll trade it because obviously I don't want to take $1 that she gave for one of your kids, but it's definitely for me. So, can you believe that? Like the Rebbe was like, "No,
Wow.
I need both of you."
Right. Wow.
Right? Like you could take a
Wow.
flame and you could take it to how? What a direct message. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'll go pick up the dollar. And it just like wasn't happening. I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to pick it up on a day that has some kind of significance. And then I was like, okay, like whatever, it'll happen when it happens. But I had this thought that went through my mind. Like, I wonder if the day that I actually get this dollar that the Rebbe wanted to give me, the day that I get it will have some significance. So I'm like, I'm not going to plan it or anything. So one day I'm like, oh, I'm coming to babysit your kids. I'll get that Rebbe dollar. And then I thought to myself, oh, today's not really a significant day. Okay, whatever. I'll just go get my dollar. Don't be so crazy, Sarah. And then I realized it was Kawach Nisan, which is a day that the Rebbe said, do all you can to bring Mashiach. I was
Mhm.
like, okay. Like, I got the message loud and clear. Thank you. I needed that. I needed that chizuk. I don't
Right.
always get chizuk every time I'm down. Sometimes I feel like I need to just like remember those times. Sometimes I'm like, I'm really having a hard time. Can you just send me a sign? Can I have a dream?
Right.
Something? No,
Right.
doesn't always happen, but
Wow, interesting. Wow, incredible.
yeah,
So, Sarah,
yeah.
looking back at the many different parts of your life and your shlichus and your children and being saved from the cult and all that, was there like do you have a lot of struggles still? What was your main struggle?
Yeah, my biggest struggle is how hard I am on myself. I would say
Mm,
it is my number one, this idea of positive thinking about oneself is
mhm,
so hard for me. And, you know, I, so back in the day when I was still opening up letters of the Rebbe, I remember one time I was like in a really bad state. I was being so hard on myself about something little that I felt I messed up. And I remember getting I opened up a letter of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, I don't know how many times I have to tell you that you need to be positive. Even if you messed up, you still need to be positive. I recommend that you memorize the content of all the chapters in Tanya on Simcha and put it to heart. So I did. I like 26, 27, 28, and I think also 32 and 33, but 26, 27, 28, I
wow.
could tell you the content off the top of my head because I put it to memory, the content. And one of the things that the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 26 of Tanya is that there's only two things that will make you sad. Either you feel bad about yourself or for yourself. And
Mm,
if you feel bad about yourself, you have to remind yourself it's the Yitzhahara. It's not coming from a holy place. If at any point in time, other than designated times for tshuva, obviously there's moments like Elazar ben Zerdaya, where he had this moment of just like tshuva for his whole life, and he had klalas and nefesh, his soul left his body because he just, had this intense moment of tshuva. But most of the time throughout our day, if we're feeling bad about ourselves, it's not coming from a holy place because all it does is drag you down. And I really struggle with that, Hannah. Like I
mm.
just I I always feel like if something is going wrong in the world, I feel it's my fault Mashiach didn't come yet. I feel it's my fault if my kids struggle. I feel everything's my fault. And it's just like a big klipa. It's a big like Yitzhara of mine. And so fostering positivity, I like lately I've been really asking myself because I'm also getting to like I'm a little older now. So, I'm having some shifts, hormonally, and I feel it's also bringing out some anxiety. I hope that's not too much information, but I feel that this stuff is coming to the surface, midlife kind of
Of
crisis kind
course.
of stuff where it's just coming up. And I feel these emotions of really like a lot of self blame and needing to work on positivity has really surfaced again. And I've been thinking a lot about what to do about it. And I don't know if it's going back to Shar HaBatachon, which has also was very life changing for me, learning the gate of trust in a book called Duties of the Heart, where the Rebbe recommended people strengthen their trust in God, or if it's going back to the chapters in Tanya. But yeah, that's my biggest challenge is like being really hard on myself, which it just leads to like a heaviness of spirit, which doesn't help. In any of the
Mhm.
situations
Mhm.
that I think I'm gonna fix through being hard on myself, it doesn't fix it. It makes things worse.
Mhm.
So that is my biggest challenge.
Your
Not,
biggest challenge.
not dressing modestly, not wearing a sheitel, not, being married for 30 years, not even being married to a busy shliach or running a Chabad house or teaching classes or teaching college. I love it all. I want every little bit of it. Still to this day, Hannah, sometimes you're gonna think I'm crazy. But I literally the other day, I like went over to my bookshelf and I just hugged it. I was like, I just want to take you all in. I still feel that way. I love Tara. I love the Rebbe. I love Hasidus. I love it all. I just need to love myself more. Like, it's like I have
Wow.
to, yeah, it's my biggest challenge.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's your favorite or most inspiring thing? Favorite mitzvah, most inspiring activity? What like you just what brings you to give that hug to all those books?
I love how deep the Torah is. I love how multifaceted it is. I love how it covers every area of life. I love how you could take one topic and study it your whole life and you'll find new depth. I love that this idea is one of my favorite ideas that the Torah is like, how you have the black letters on the white parchment. So it's like the black. So Kabbalah is a Kabbalistic teaching that the black letters are the gateways to the light of Hashem that's behind it. That when you learn an idea on Torah, it's a gateway. Your mind is the gateway to God Himself. You're literally connecting with the infinity of God when you learn Torah. That to me is the most exciting thing in the world. Like that's incredible. Give it to me all day long. Like that's amazing. So
Wow.
that I love.
Do you ever look back at your life and say, "What if this didn't happen?" Or is this not just not
I it's funny because I think you asked me that last time. Maybe you didn't, but I've definitely been asked that question before. God forbid. I don't know. Like no, I can't. I cannot imagine my life without Tara, without the
right?
Rebbe, with that. No, no, no.
Wow. Wow. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Incredible part 2 of your story,
Thank
and we
you.
wish you continued success in your
Amen.
book and in your shlichus with your children, with all your struggles to really look positively at yourself
Amen.
and to see how amazing of a person you truly are.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's my pleasure
Yeah,
to
you
be
should
here.
like my grandmother used to say, you should have nachas we should all have nachas from our children, but you should also have nachas from yourself.
Amen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. When I was first considering interviewing Sara Korn, there was 2 parts to her story that really intrigued me. The first part was her getting caught by this cult and her escaping from this cult. And what brought her to that? What brought her to this search that she was after? And how did she leave that cult, not only physically, but emotionally as well, and find instead this great quest for her Judaism and her spirituality? The other part of her and that, of course, was what we discussed in the first interview that I did with her, which if you haven't seen, please look back and you will see it. You'll see that incredible story that she shared. The second part of her story that I was so intrigued with was how she met her husband, and it almost seems like this beautiful love story. They were young, they were teenagers, and they somehow sensed that they were meant for each other. But then things went in such different directions. Her husband, right away, very soon after, became a religious Jew, an observant Jew. He was studying to become a rabbi, and she went in a very, very different direction. That was when she went to this cult and for her searching with Christianity and so forth. and she wasn't anywhere near where he was at. And even after he had rescued her with his aunt, it was still, they were in still such very, very different places. And yet, somehow, some way, God put them together. And I feel that that was kind of a message for so many of us. You know, life has its twists and turns. And when you're meant to be together, you'll be together. And I thought that was just such a beautiful part of her story, how these two soulmates are growing in their own way, but how they then come together, because really the world is all God's plan, and God's bringing things together in the ways that we can't even imagine. And this was a little part of what she alluded to in terms of what she was saying about the cult, how it was full of, when she was leaving the cult, and the letter that she received from them was all about the evil, and the evil being caught in the clutches of this evil powers, and how she learned through Hasidus and through her studies in Judaism that there's no such thing as this world of evil, but it's all the world of God, and it's all God who is pulling it all together and creating all of the content and creating the ends that are meant to be. And I felt that was really a beautiful point that we can all take home in our message. There's no such thing as this power of evil. It's all the power of God, and how God is bringing us all together in the ways that we're meant to be brought together, and bringing our stories to beautiful conclusions, or in this case, beginnings, with her beginnings of being a shlucha. If you enjoyed these interviews, I hope you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. You can find us on all podcast platforms. You can find us on YouTube as well. Give us a like, drop us a comment, give us a 5-star rating, share with your friends. We love for you to be a part of this podcast, and for you to share it with whoever you think might be enjoying it. Thank you so much for watching and for being a part of this extraordinary community.